A very warm welcome to This World Game Changers podcast, where your host, Paul D. Lowe, embraces many crucial conversations that compassionately contribute towards creating a better life and world. Paul's intention is very simple: to help get people's inspirational insights and motivational messages out into the world so others may benefit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this World Game Changers podcast episode. My name is Rebecca Wheele. I am a director at World Game Changers. And today I am joined by Paul Lowe. Welcome, Paul.
Muchas gracias.
How are you today?
Terrible, thank you.
Excellent. So today we are going to do all sorts of deep dives around Alice in Wonderland. And I mean, where do we start here, Paul? You know, we talk a lot about rabbit holes, don't we? Going down rabbit holes. I was thinking about this. You know, Alice starts her journey by going down a rabbit hole. And I was thinking about, you know, the conversation and where it will take us. And, you know, we never know. And that's kind of like the definition of a rabbit hole, isn't it? You go down there, it's kind of into the abyss, it's into the unknown. What are your thoughts around, can you choose to go down a rabbit hole, or does it just happen? Do you just get taken there?
Great question. And before we dive in on that, let's just hold that thought for a moment, because I want to really take this intriguing journey, listeners, to another level by saying, when Alice in Wonderland met Steve Jobs, now there's a combination. And I've done something over the last couple of days that I don't normally do. This has really captured me for some reason. And I've actually done something, horror of horrors, called research around it. You know, and it's like, I just do not. The last time I did research around the podcast was on the very first episode, which was 523 episodes ago.
Wow.
And I did some, in fact, no, research is not the right. I made some notes. I can remember it was a solo. And I did 8 pages of notes of what I was going to say, and I'd got it planned to the nth degree. And then I was fumbling when I pressed the record button. I was fumbling and bumbling, and it's, do you know what? Just rip all these up and just dive in, because I literally went down so many rabbit holes. Which brings us nicely back to your question. You'll have to refresh my memory again. What was your exact question?
Well, the exact question was, can you decide to go down a rabbit hole, or do you just get taken?
Would you put your hand in the fire?
Pardon?
Would you put your hand in a fire?
Very quickly, because I know that if you do it really quickly, you don't get burnt.
Right, okay. That's a good answer, because the answer to your question, Rebecca, is how long's a piece of string? We're always looking for that definitive, polarized binary answer, aren't we? You know, in marketing terms, that silver bullet, that one thing that will give us that it's either black or white, it's either day or night, you know, that polarized rich poor. This is why you and I have spoke quite a lot around the paradoxes that go with Taoism, for example. There isn't a right, there isn't a wrong. Now, in some respects, listeners, you might say that's a bit of a politician's sit on the fence answer. You haven't committed yourself. You know, do we deliberately go down rabbit holes, or do we have a choice? Yes and no.
Yeah, I did that. I was just thinking yes and no, and then you said it. It's that paradoxical nature, isn't it? And I think that's what's so intriguing about Alice in Wonderland, because it's this nonsensical world, completely, you know, gobbledygook nonsense, but somehow it holds some kind of deep wisdom, because there's a lot of paradoxes.
At the risk of, at the risk of nothing, Paul, at the risk of nothing. I love that saying, at the risk of nothing. I want to kind of frame that and offer this, Rebecca, if I may, and it is an offer, to say that in some respects, this energy, this dance around what we're talking around, and I'm going to introduce a word in terms of Alice in Wonderland, which a few people might find a bit alarming, called logic. Because when Lewis Carroll wrote it, there was intended logic in there. You know, that logic and that wisdom, does that not kind of, and the contrast of this whole whimsical, wondrous, creative, let's go down a rabbit hole, does that kind of not reflect the dance that you and I have regularly?
Yeah. And also that brings like into mind the riverbank and the flow. And I feel like any kind of, I don't know, anything that is really creative, or because the flow, the river, the water kind of is all over the place, isn't it? So it kind of goes everywhere, and it's kind of just, but without that riverbank, it's too chaotic. But then the riverbank holds it in a place where then it can dance and flow, and you know, and the two together is really powerful. But both each kind of just on their own, you know, the riverbank just kind of is solid, but there's no kind of fluidity there, and then the water is the chaos, but then it gets held by the riverbank. So it's like the yin and yang as well.
Yeah. So metaphorically, then I suppose you could have a really soft riverbank with some really hard flow down. Maybe that's another conversation another time. Let's get back to when Alice met Steve. It's almost a bit like when Harry met Sally.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not. Who am I to judge? In terms of that logic and that riverbank, Rebecca, it seems so strange calling you Rebecca, but that is your name after all.
It is.
Or your
formal name.
Your formal
my professional name.
Maybe it's Alice from here on in.
Maybe.
Or Penny. Maybe allow me to be that riverbank.
Okay.
And approach this wondrous topic.
Wondrous.
Yeah, you like that word, don't you? You really like that word, wondrous. This wondrous topic with why, with what, why, and how. That's a structure, isn't it? That's an approach. Because the thing is, we've got so many things here that we're going to be, I know we're going to be, and honestly, listeners, you know, when we jump on a podcast with a guest, or when I do, and certainly the ones with Rebecca, and we've done many now, we know each other so well that you can kind of say how long the conversation's going to be, you know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because we know the topic area, we know how each other reacts, thinks, etc., within reason, within a great deep reason. I've got to confess on this one, I haven't got a clue how long this one will last, because there is a whole field of rabbit holes here, and I haven't got a clue how deep they are. That's what makes it wondrous.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the what then. If you could indulge me, Rebecca, on this kind of, dare I say, this riverbank, this masculine approach of, you know, having a structure in place. So the what. Let's give a little context, listeners, to the what is Alice in Wonderland. What's interesting for me, Lewis Carroll wrote it in 1865.
Yeah.
Something very, very close to my heart was also formed in 1865 called Nottingham Forest Football Club.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. And just as a quick sort of recap on what Alice in Wonderland. Maybe I was right there. Maybe I was right. It details the story of a young girl, obviously called Alice, who falls through a rabbit hole into a fantasy world of weird and wondrous creatures. The tale does play with logic too, so it's appealing to adults as well as to children. And the book has been transcribed into 174 languages. Alice Through the Looking Glass followed in 1871. It's stood the test of time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has.
It stood the test of time. It has to have something magical, whimsical, wondrous about it. And listeners, I don't know, particularly listeners in, dare I say, that more masculine energy, how that lands with you when you hear words like wondrous, whimsical, magical. I know for years I wouldn't have engaged in a podcast like this. I'd have shut it right down. It's hocus pocus. It's nonsense. You're in cookery. You've been smoking some funny cigarettes, or you've had one gin and tonic too many, or whatever or whatever it is. But it brings in, Rebecca, does it not, this whole concept of, to quote a Gerverism, childlike curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it captures the imagination, because when we're children, we are, creating worlds and lands and invisible friends, and like so much. The imagination in a child is kind of off the scale. There's no limits to it. And it's interesting actually, because I have a few quotes that really captured me when I was looking at Alice in Wonderland, and one of them is curiouser and curiouser. Another one is nothing's impossible. And yeah, that childlike curiosity is I think something that is really, really is really what captures people's hearts with Alice in Wonderland, because there's a freedom in going into a world where it's magical and wondrous. And even if there are some people who are kind of like, oh, I'm not sure about that, I don't really like, I feel that there's a part of everyone that is drawn to that, because there's such a freedom in it.
Yeah, and it's that, the risk of sort of generalizing, and that can be dangerous, to make those assumptions, but that kind of conditioning that stops us. And particularly, I'll speak about my own kind of very strong masculine defensive energy for decades of, no, I'm not having that nonsense. That's for women and kids, would have been my response.
Right.
But actually, do you know what, guys? And I say guys, very strong masculine energy. Are we not women and kids as well, or parts thereof? If we really did sort of started to peel back the layer, look in the mirror and be honest with ourselves, Alice Through the Looking Glass. Are we not, or do we not have that feminine energy, that childlike curiosity? Because I'll tell you what, I'll take responsibility and say I do. And boy, what a wondrous, wondrous world, Rebecca, to live in.
I think that's such an important message for people, especially men, to hear, because we're not these we're not into just a box of that's exactly what one person is, but there's a fluidity within us, and also we've all been children. There's no one that hasn't been a child. We've all been children, and we're all able to relate to feminine and masculine, and to sorry, go ahead.
No, it just reminded me when you were speaking there about my late mother, and one of the things she consistently said to me from childhood, right and through till when she passed, and she said, Paul, men never grow up, and you've got no chance. And I said, you know what, Ma? That is the greatest compliment you've ever paid me. And she said, and she used a few expletives, which I'll keep out, but it wasn't meant to compliment. Now get out.
Yeah. What is interesting though, like what is growing up like is a funny thing, isn't it? You think, oh yeah, you grow up. Okay, so physically we grow up, but like what is the actual, it kind of insinuates that you kind of become serious, and you lose that playfulness and that fun almost, doesn't it? There's a kind of sense that it's like this thing that becoming an adult is like this thing where you lose all of that magic in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as beings, irrespective of whether we, listeners, my views on labels, Rebecca, we've we've had this conversation a million, billion, trillion, zillion times, brackets many, that, what are these things called labels? They're societal stepping stones for, for me, when we look at the 6 human needs, it meets that first need of certainty. Oh, I can put you in a box because you are young, you are female, you wear a hoodie, you do this, you do that, you hang around on a street corner, ergo, you are. Bang. Okay, now I've got you summarized now, so I don't have to think about you or worry about you in any respect, shape, or form, because I know where you land in my model of the world. The problem is, my model of the world is not a true model of the world. And then when I find out that actually this young person on a street corner with a hoodie, that most might draw a conclusion is, inverted commas, up to no good. Well, actually, that beautiful young person's just come from the gym and is waiting on the corner to meet a grandmother so she can carry her shops. But no, we haven't factored in. We've made a judgment within our model of the world, and this is why I want to call you Rebecca.
Sure. When I was younger, I used to say W's instead of R's.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, a bit of deja vu creeping in there, methinks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this whole thing of stripping out labels around, it doesn't matter what they are, because surely as energy, as spirits, as beings, we're in this body at this moment in time, which might be male, female, or whatever it is. There are many variations thereof nowadays. And that's a whole new separate conversation, being respectful to all beings. But this simplicity, and it is simplicity, and that Lewis Carroll is underpinned by simplicity, which by definition makes it very complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, the simplicity of stripping labels out, my world is very simple. Maybe my mother's right. You are the most simple character I'll ever meet, but you drive me nuts because I can't fathom you out. Well, that's another paradox, surely.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry. I want to read you a quote, which was my favourite quote. And this is before Alice goes into the rabbit hole. She says, "If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense. Nothing would be what it is, because everything would be what it isn't. And contrariwise, what is, it wouldn't be. And what it wouldn't be, it would." You see?
I get it.
So, yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, me too.
Get it.
Yeah. It's so funny because there's such truth to it. But at the same time, it appears nonsense. And those two pieces existing in the same space is what makes it like resonant, I think.
But that word nonsense, no sense. Nonsense. How many times, listeners, have you, in whatever context, whatever situation, said to yourself, because of something that's come out of the blue, that's taken you by surprise, and you say, it just doesn't make sense. And it puts you in bad space because it hasn't, because of that nonsensical event. It wasn't in your model of the world. It wasn't in your script. It's took you by surprise. It's turned your world upside down. Loss of a job, moving house, breakup of a relationship, whatever. I can remember, when my ex-wife and I lost our first child, I can remember then, this just doesn't make sense. There's all these people in the world abusing kids. And yet we want a child to love and nurture, and we can't have that. It just doesn't make sense. I can remember those words. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It was part of the story I created at the time. And so, I just kind of want to flag that up, that nonsense, because get used to nonsense in the world, get used to uncertainty, because it's one of the few realities that we can truly pin our hopes on.
Yeah.
Or our realities, should I say. But we don't. We don't. We go for the nice, warm, tried and tested. Let me stay in my comfort zone. Let me opt for certainty as my biggest need. And please, listeners, I sincerely hope this doesn't come across as being judgmental, stereotyping, generalizing. This is as a basis of having literally thousands and thousands of conversations with people over the years from all walks of life. So it doesn't fit a nice, neat and tidy model. It's something that, you know, really has held water over the years. I want to go on to the why, Rebecca, the why of this particular situation. This, you know, when Alice in Wonderland met Steve Jobs, why? Alice in Wonderland represents the child's struggle to survive in a confusing world of adults. Dare I say this need for certainty? To understand our adult world, Alice has to overcome the open-mindedness that is characteristic for children. Apparently, adults need to live by rules. Any thoughts on that, Alice?
Interesting. Yes, I feel that children are kind of taken through these constrictions as a child by adults, and that to a certain degree that they need that. They can't just be kind of run riot, and they need those lessons. But yeah, I feel like there is definitely rules. Rules are an interesting one, aren't they? Because I guess rules can constrict things, and unless we have the awareness to dance with the rules, or at least to be aware of what the rule is there, why the rule is there, and kind of question them, and not always, this is the rule and that's what it's always going to be. I think that's when it comes rigid. So I think there's definitely a fluidity and a creativity within children that can get suppressed by adults.
Yeah. So that brings us on to the how. And this is probably the last point, listeners, where that more structured, masculine, because I'm really going to start going down some rabbit holes soon. So, but I offer this. So, how can the story serve us? Because ultimately, in this incarnation called the human body, this, where we are now, surely one of the biggest questions we ask ourselves is my story serving me? What script, what conditionings, what beliefs, what awareness do I have? Whatever they are, the big question is, are they serving me? Is it serving me? Is my life good? Am I, inverted commas, happy? Whatever happiness is. So, yeah. Any thoughts on that, Rebecca? I've certainly got quite a few bullet points, and I know without a shadow of a doubt you have too. You will have trillions of them.
Okay. Well, firstly, I feel like for a lot of my life, I wasn't even aware of that kind of concept or that reality, I guess, that truth that we exist in our, from our perspective in our world, and we have stories and beliefs that aren't the truth. So for a lot of my life, I didn't actually have that awareness. So I feel like it starts with the awareness to know that our life is actually run by our beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves. And then once that awareness around that as a concept is there, then we can start to have a look at, okay, so what are those beliefs? What are those stories? Where did that come from? Is that serving me? And then create some change. So that was the piece about the stories and serving. Was there something else, sorry, that you touched upon there? Or was that, I feel like I've gone down a rabbit hole.
That's fine. That's fine. We won't justify. We'll just, we're in flow, whatever.
Yes.
And all that we ask listeners is, if you find it confusing, that's great. Because to quote the enigmatic Tony Robbins, confusion comes before a breakthrough.
Indeed.
But we don't like confusion, do we? We don't like, because we're conditioned. We want life to run very linear, very smooth, very silky smooth, etc., etc. It ain't like that.
However, there must be a part of us that does like confusion, because otherwise we wouldn't be drawn to things like Harry Potter, Alice in Wonderland, Lord of the Rings, all of these mystical, magical worlds. There is an element of confusion in those worlds. So I feel like there is a part of us that's curious about confusion.
Yes, but let's put that in context then. So when you're watching a film, a fantasy film, Alice in Wonderland, for example, you're still in control of it. You're watching the film. When it's happening to you, you've got no control. There's a big difference. So yes, we can escape by watching soap operas, by watching Harry Potter's, Alice in Wonderland's, whatever the escapism is, because we can be a part of that world. But the reality is that uncertainty of what's coming in that film, we can control it. Because if we don't like it, we switch the TV off or we leave the cinema. When life's happening to us, though, rather than through us, we haven't got that control. Why does this always happen to me? This is nonsense. You see the difference? There's a big difference. When you're watching the TV, you can control it and you can then escape on your terms. When life comes along in reality and deals with you in a way that it does, or she does, that's a different story. And that's why I'm a great advocate of the adage, let life happen through you, not to you.
For you as well, because for you is choosing to see the synchronicities and the signs and the different it's choosing your stories and your beliefs as well, isn't it?
And I don't know why, when you were saying that just there, something came into my mind. And she's, I'm a great fan of her previous work, as you know, Catherine Tate. I just love Catherine Tate's earlier work. And when you were speaking there, and I've got no connection, and they talk about going down another rabbit hole, I just felt, yeah, whatever. Anyway, let's move on from that. Because I think, with all these beautiful things, and this is the beauty, listeners, is it not, of childlike curiosity? There's no justification, there's no rationale. It is what it is, to quote a well-known cliche. Whereas as we get older, these rules that Lewis Carroll kind of, alluded to, and this logic, we've got to be able to make sense of it. We've got to be able to control it. We've got to be able to work it out. That, for me, is because of the uncertainty that is created in our world as we get more real experiences, breakup of relationships, death, whatever that context, that massive change that takes place as we progress through the journey of life, imparts upon us, and that conditioning, of people letting us down, we create a whole new belief system, and we leave that trusting, beautiful, loving, childlike curiosity behind. So I think it's time to quote John Major from the 80s, it's time to get back to basics, surely. Let's learn to, I want to do a podcast, Rebecca, called Kiss the Sun and Touch the Moon.
Yeah, that's a great title and idea. Yeah.
And you know why? I don't even know why. Because it's in my heart, and that's all. and ensure that ultimately, despite all the drudgery and all the tears and all the heartache and all the major problems we're encountering on a macro level in the world today, and even though, sort of more closer to home where loved ones are being lost, or in, really challenging illnesses, and, everything that goes with that, and believe me, listeners, my script, and this is certainly not about me. My story. I'm just one small example of millions and millions and millions of people throughout this world that actually chose to have a different story. In fact, chose to have no story at all.
Blank slate.
Blank slate.
Yeah.
Blank slate. So how can the story serve us? I want to start. I don't know whether to call you Rebecca, Rebecca, Alice. I don't know what to call you anymore. I don't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, does it? Yeah. Anything. Would you answer to anything?
Probably not. I mean, maybe. Who knows?
So anything. How can the story serve us? I want to start with the Cheshire Cat, because you're smiling and grinning like a Cheshire Cat. What does those two words...
I love the Cheshire Cat.
I thought you might do somehow. And you're smiling like a Cheshire Cat at the moment. Go on, start us off on this one. Start us off on the Cheshire Cat.
So the Cheshire Cat comes and goes, doesn't it? It kind of appears and comes out with these kind of little... I don't know, just these remarks and kind of, again, that word nonsensical, like words. And I think the Cheshire Cat comes in when Alice is she's trying to find her way, but the Cheshire Cat asks, well, where are you going? She says, I don't know, or something. She says, I don't know where I'm going. So I think the Cheshire Cat says something like, well, then you can go down any path if you don't know where you're going. So but the Cheshire Cat's I just love the energy of the Cheshire Cat. It's kind of playful and kind of jokey and almost taunting a little bit, isn't it?
But
in a funny way.
I love that. If you don't know where you want to go, then it doesn't what path you take. So that kind of, what that says to me in many respects is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. And that really goes back to what you said at the top of the conversation, doesn't it, around the riverbanks and the flow. Because without that kind of guidance, that way ahead, that intention, that riverbank, it's just all over the place. We're like a metaphoric ship in life's stormy seas. We've got no rudder, we've got no direction, and we don't stand for something. We've got no course. And that's why I always advocate it's so important. People, I think generally, we're looking for that definite, tell me how it's going to be, that need for certainty again. But if we haven't got that rudder on our ship of knowing that purpose, and the way we get that is, and we want that definite answer of, oh, this is what I'm going to do. We want the answer and the rubber stamping that it's going to be okay before we take the journey. It doesn't work that way.
We want to see it to believe it, don't we?
Yeah.
Whereas actually, to believe something, then you start seeing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same kind of similar idea around that, because exactly as you're saying, people feel like that if they want to achieve something, they need to know how they're going to do it, or they need, but actually the belief, just the pure belief of, I'm gonna go in that direction, I'm gonna do this, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but having the belief to just know, it will be the thing, paradoxically, that means that you will know how.
And that for me, Rebecca, is called purpose. And that's why that for me, one of the three pillars of life is purpose. The first one is purpose. You know, you might be totally unsure about, is it a good idea? Well, in the absence of a good idea, go with it, because experience will soon
Yeah.
show you that whether it was a good or not so good idea, rather than, well, you know, and trying to work it out in your head. No, don't. Create a purpose, something that's kind of lighting you, you know, get in touch with that inner feeling, that energy, that vibration that's saying, wow, do you know what? Even though my head and my peers are saying this is wrong, this feels really good inside, because I know this is my life's purpose. And I speak from experience here, because I've had this all my life. I've had this all my life, swimming against the tide. People think I'm crazy, think I'm nuts. And we'll come to that with some of the quotes in a while, not least from Steve Jobs. So there's this whole thing, but there again, we're not conditioned to trust our own heart, to trust our own intuition. We're conditioned to go with the masses. You know, mum said that, dad said that, you know, peers said that, siblings said that, the doctor said that, the teacher said that, the farmer said this. And we go with it. And it's like, and once you start going, oh, you see, I knew. Oh, you take after your uncle. Your uncle was always a rebel. You know, things like, so, okay.
And we're almost so deep within it that we don't actually. It's like we need to kind of step outside of ourselves, remove ourselves from ourselves to really be able to see it. Because I think a lot of the time that we do believe that, you know, oh, well, the teacher said this, and the you know, this is the way that what you should do, you know, that word should, or, you know, we just have this idea of what is maybe even expected of us, or what, you know, the people around us we have this kind of invisible pressure that actually no one's actually putting on, really. But I mean, maybe in some cases that's the case, but there is this kind of this conditioning of what the way is, or what, you know, you do this and then you do this and then you do this, and until we can actually, I know it sounds a bit strange, but separate ourselves from ourselves, take that step away. And that's what meditation does. You know, we've talked about that before, you know, creating those gaps, and really that perspective of almost nothing, looking down on, not looking down, but just looking at who we are, creating the more gaps we can actually create from ourselves, if this makes any sense, to really see what we're doing, and to get in tune with our heart and remove all the noise. Because a lot of the time it's like the heart is kind of this steady whisper, and it's always there, and there's always that kind of intuition and the deep knowing. But the world, especially today with technology, social media, you know, we're constantly on the phone and scrolling through things. And, you know, sometimes I'm like, I'll be doing something, right, and it's like I don't know, a task for a couple of minutes, and I can't, like, I feel like I need something like noise, so I put like a podcast on. And but if you do that all the time, you're not actually sitting with your own thoughts and feelings. So but anyway, I feel like I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Massive rabbit hole there, massive rabbit hole. But why not?
But I think my point is to get quiet, you know, and I think that's what's missing in a lot of people's lives, is that space and that quietness. You know, every day I feel like it's a practice that for me anyway, I know that practice of meditation and prayer every single day is so I can't even explain how. I don't even want to say the word helpful, but do you know what I mean? It's just such to be in that stillness and to be connected with that feeling and with the heart and with source, with the universe, and with what's going on internally but also externally at the same time. is so important.
I want to share. I've had a conversation with my oldest daughter over the last couple of days, and we were talking about like when there was kids. The three of them used to come and stay with me just after me and the mother split. And anyway, so I used to live near a country park with what was then my fiance, and the kids used to, and there was only little, I don't know, 4, 6, and 8, something like that. And as we used to go around this country park, I used to tell them stories. And one day I told him about this story around when I used to swim up waterfalls. Wow, you used to swim up a waterfall, Dad? Yeah. What was it like when you got to the top? I don't know. I never got to the top. Why, Dad? Why didn't you get to the top? Because usually there was an alley dial coming down the stream, and I had to wrestle with the alley dial, or was it a crocodigator? I can't remember. But anyway, and then what I had to do, so I was busy doing that halfway up. Well, didn't you fall to the bottom? No, I didn't have time. I was too busy. And then just as I'd finished, with the alley dial or the crocodigator, what I did then was my mobile rang. Yeah, but Daddy did have mobiles in those days when you were young. Well, how old do you think I am? Oh, you're ancient. What does ancient mean? Oh, I don't know. My teacher said ancient this morning. I don't know what she was on about. And I said, did you ask her? No, I don't like her. And the child's going down and, blah, blah, blah. And I said, the reason, anyway, when I'd finished wrestling, I said, I had to go and play for England at football because they wanted me on a substitute half time. Did you play football for England? I did. Yeah, I did, babes. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Wow. Did you ever score goals? Oh, I can't remember. I scored that many. Oh, tell us about one of them, Dad. Tell us about one of the goals you scored. Once I scored 100. Oh, no, sorry. That was run for England at cricket. Wow. You played cricket for England? Oh, I was all over the place. And Amy, my eldest, she like, yeah, you're certainly all over the place, Dad. I think she was about 8 or 9 at the time. Yeah, she was only young anyway, but she had that real awareness about her, to say, okay.
Yeah. Because I guess when they're a lot younger, they just go with it and they're like, oh, wow. And they get kind of, but then there's, an age where they can kind of have the awareness to see it kind of going all over the place.
Yeah. And part of that conversation with my eldest this weekend, Amy, was she used to watch a program as a kid called The Wuzzles. And on there, they had a puffer telly and used to have bumbly lines. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it there because, we don't want to go down too many rabbit holes. Well, maybe we do. But we've got many more to visit yet. So let's pick up Cheshire Cat. Let's come to the Cheshire Cat's teeth. This is where Lewis Carroll, for me, was a genius.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something, Rebecca, that you know. Oh, it seems so strange calling you Rebecca. I can't call you Rebecca.
Call me anything. I like that.
Okay, listen, anything. I think your father might have something to say about that. I'll check in with him next time.
Yeah.
The cat's teeth. The cat's teeth. And I noticed or remarked upon it at the top of this conversation, because obviously we're on video as well, around the big Cheshire grin smile you got, that real kind of natural joy, that kind of childlike, eyes are wide, childlike curiosity, big grin, that natural joy. And that went really, you've heard me speak about this so many times in kind of, when we look in the mirror, kiss the mirror. Louise Hay was a great advocate of it. Well, not exactly kiss the mirror, but something very similar. But that positive self-fulfilling dialogue. But when you look in the mirror, again, Rebecca, I was going to say to have a shave. No, that's Paul. That's you that has the shave. See
Well, I've cut
this?
my eyebrows in the mirror, so we can. That's equivalent.
Yeah, that's equivalent. I want to come to eyebrows in a moment.
Okay,
This we're going off at another rabbit, but hold that thought. Eyebrows.
I'm intrigued.
Yes, intrigued. Um, but when you imagine, listeners, looking in the mirror, male, female, the gender is totally irrelevant, and you look in there and you've got just put this, no matter how you're feeling, and yes, even if you have to force it, even if you have to fake it, put this big cheesy child Cheshire Cat grin on and see what it does to you naturally, even though you don't want to do it because you feel angry because of whatever reason. You just had a new gas bill come through the door, and I don't know, you miss your train and you can't get into whatever it is. I don't know, but force, if you have to, and just force that grin and look in that mirror, and I bet you there's an internal reaction that and the ego want to fight it. Oh, grow up, stop being so stupid, Paul.
Yeah.
You're in your late 20s. Why are you doing this?
Mm.
And all this silliness.
Yes. And that's funny because I remember hearing once that if you start laughing when you're just laugh, and then you'll actually, like, if just force it, and then you actually will start laughing. And so it's the same thing, isn't it? It's
yeah.
And your body doesn't really know the difference, and I think that's a lot of the time we have this inner dialogue and we feel like that's, I don't know. I remember something about, like, actually it was Marissa Peer. You've heard of Marissa Peer, and she talks about when she's giving talks, she'll get everyone to close their eyes, and she'll get everyone to imagine a lemon, and cutting open a lemon, and the zestiness, and then bringing that lemon to your mouth, and chewing on that lemon, and really smelling that lemony smell, that zestiness, and your body naturally starts to create saliva. There's no lemon, it's not real, but our body physiologically it will listen to every single thing as if it were real. So we might as well play with it, exactly like the smiling. If you start to smile, your body is going to say, oh, okay, well, maybe we're happy, maybe we're in a good space. So I feel like there's such an opportunity to play with this, but we tend to kind of just think, oh, I'm in this, we feel there's no options sometimes. We feel like if we're in a bad mood, we're just in a bad mood, there's nothing we can do, but actually we can play maybe with it.
That's kind of around the placebo effect, isn't it? You tell you what was going through my my creative mind there as you were speaking, anything was I don't know what was going through. I was going to sing a song. It was a Barry Manilow. It'll come to me. It'll come. It was about the lemon, and it's gone. It's gone. It will come back. It'll come back.
Yes.
So the chest is right. Number 3, drink me, eat me. Now, what this strikes for me is it reflects and reminds us of the self-doubt and the lack of trust that we have in our own world. So what would you do with that situation of drink me? And then, well, let's hold it there. Anything? What would you do? So there's a potion on. You're down in this magical, wondrous, whimsical place, and there it is. Drink me. Would you drink it?
I feel like the curiosity would take over, and I would. But I say that, and I'm not in that situation, so I don't know, but I would like to think that that's what I would do.
And the creative, and this yet again is a great one, and this is where Lewis Carroll's genius of penning this amazing story brought in so much. You would like to think, I would venture that you wouldn't. You wouldn't, because of all the conditioning that we had or have. And this is not you personally. horror of horrors, generalizing, but well, you don't know what's in there. It could be nitric acid, for example. But it brings in that kind of actual uncertainty of what's in the bottle. And yet again, that's the antidote to certainty. And we don't like that. We like certainty as humans, mainly. There are vast exceptions where, what's that term, that label? Adrenaline junkies. Their world is based on uncertainty, not certainty.
The variety, which is the
Yes.
opposite, isn't it,
Yes.
in that model?
Yeah, but they are vastly in the minority, vastly. So we've got this, this bottle and this label that says "drink me," but we don't. Why? Because of the distrust that we have in life generally. If you put a child in there, I would venture that most children would drink it. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, because it could be nitric acid. But I'm just explaining or highlighting or trying to, I suppose, reflect back Lewis Carroll's message here, because this is the power of Alice in Wonderland for me. Anything that there are so many messages for life in here, so many. And then on the flip side is
sorry, Paul, I lost you there. You were breaking up.
That's fine. Don't worry. I was talking, so I'm recorded. When that happens, you don't need to say anything. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, the cake. Now, she shrinks by drinking the potion, but then not only goes back to status quo, but enlarges by eating the cake. Hence the saying, drink me, eat me. But we don't, do we? Because there again, what's in that cake? Could be arsenic in the cake.
Yeah.
But I wonder how many metaphoric children in a room of, say, 100 children in a room that says, eat me, how many children would actually say no? Very few. Very few.
Yeah. But, I feel like that for good reason as well, that people are careful and cautious. We do exist in a world where, yes, there's a lot of beauty, there's a lot of wonder, but there's also a lot of really terrible things that happen. So it's no wonder that people are careful and cautious. And I suppose it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, for example, we're talking about like a bottle of something, and you don't know what it is. And same thing with if someone was walking down the street and asked you for directions, and you kind of say that you judge them, and maybe they look a certain way that you feel like you're a bit kind of afraid, or you're a bit, it's like the question is always, are we going to keep ourselves safe, or are we going to trust? I don't know really where I'm going with this, but I'm just trying to kind of dance with that idea of like, there is dangerous things in the world. Then there is to a certain degree, we do have to keep ourselves safe, but at the same time, there's just trusting. And especially with people, I feel like that lack of trust with people is something that's really not serving anyone. And I feel like the more that we can just trust people with a certain level of discernment, it puts that out into the universe, and it creates that energetic, it shifts our reality in a sense. By putting trust out there, then we get trust back. But yeah, I guess I'm just trying to explore this kind of problem, if you like, of actually the reality of the dangers in the world as well. I mean, you know firsthand from your life's experience that that's there, and it's an interesting one. Any thoughts around that at all?
Millions, zillions, billions,
Yeah.
trillions.
Yeah.
The simplicity of it is we all need a riverbank.
Mm.
That's the simplicity. We all need a riverbank. That confidant, that I don't want to stick labels on it, but those people, and they you know, I think they're very few and far between. They're not on every street corner, but those people that that give us that space, that give us that security, that give us that everything to sort of just be who we want to be. And that's, you know, that's kind of in many respects might come across as quite philosophical, but that's where my world's landed after, you know, after a certain few years on this beautiful planet, because I think there's that sweet spot to be had between, as you know, I mean, my life has been dominated by darkness, by violence, by addiction. You know, you've seen some of the, you know, you've seen the area where I was brought up at. You know, we've shared those. I've shared with you those experiences, and you know, etc., etc. So yes, my world is very real. However, I allowed my world to distort the reality of who I truly was for many, many, many years. And I've actually come back the other way. Now, and that's why I can flirt and live in this whimsical, crazy world of childlike curiosity. Speak to young people, get inspired by them massively, because they're not constrained by the fears of what might happen. Yes, these things can happen, and they do happen. Let's be blunt about this. Heinous crimes such as raping children do take place. Let's not mince our words. You know, old people do get beat up and left for dead. Let's not mince our words. This is real, and these are not isolated. However, in the bigger in the bigger picture of things, and I'm certainly not trivializing those horrific scenarios. I'm not. And listeners, please, I hope I don't come across as being insensitive in that respect, because I'm certainly not. Far from it. I also know the beauty in this world, the beauty that I've come to know and understand by the other side of that coin. In fact, it's not the other side of the coin, because that denotes it's a 50-50. It's not a 50-50. This world is a beautiful, beautiful, wondrous place, and one that I made the conscious decision many years ago to choose love over fear. Does that mean I'm just lay down and become everybody's fool and let people trample all over me? No, it doesn't. Does that mean I'd stand by and watch a loved one attacked? No, it doesn't. Does that mean I would step in and take whatever necessary action I needed to protect a loved one? You're damn right I would. Yeah. So there is that balance to be had. But I feel that, you know, we can either be that person that is our own riverbank and our own flow, which can be quite challenging when you're constantly changing gears, or be part of a team where the flow and the riverbank go hand in hand. Mad Hatter. You see, that's brought a Cheshire smile to your face. And I just want to kind of, this leads us nicely into Steve Jobs, and just a quote from this one. You're entirely bonkers, but I tell you a secret. All the best people are.
I love that.
Is there anything to add? I mean, or does that kind of say it all?
It says it all. It says it all.
And as I've alluded to, that brings in some Steve Jobs quotes. And I want to start with that ionic one. Is ionic. Anyway, is well-known one. Well-known one. And this really, I feel, addresses world game changers.
Okay.
The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world, or those who do.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And it's so true.
Because with Alice's childlike curiosity, she believed in the betterment. She believed in the good. She had the trust to drink the potion. She had the trust to eat the cake. She had the trust to, and the courage. It's not a word we've used too much in this dialogue, in this dance. The courage to go on a journey of self-discovery. Wow.
Yeah.
That's not a bad lesson for us to learn, is it?
Yeah. And it's interesting because my idea of what courage means has actually changed through my life. And I used to think that when you had courage, you weren't afraid. But actually, I feel like now courage is you're afraid, but you do it anyway.
Beautiful.
That's kind of
yeah. Because it adds in awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It adds in awareness. Yeah, I know this, and it's like, okay, if I do taste the lemon, it's going to taste bitter. It's going to taste, whatever it's going to taste. But I'm going to do it anyway. You and I have spoke around the proverbial 10-meter diving board, standing
exactly.
up there, and you look down, and then you've got somebody chattering in your ear, Rebecca, it's 30 odd feet, 33 feet, you've got to jump. Look how far down it is. And when you get into that pool, it's freezing, absolutely freezing. And it'll take your breath away. And the pool is not that deep. So just be careful. Just be careful. And you really don't want to do it. And that's a great story that we all tell ourselves around what I call the 10-meter diving board.
Yeah. And the unknown comes into it as well. I feel like another metaphor for this that's definitely been very kind of true for me in my life is like public speaking and talking in front of a lot of people. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to as well. It's one of the biggest fears, I think, amongst people. And it's funny because you see people, if someone's giving a talk or something and you feel like, oh, they must have no nerves because they're appearing, however they're appearing, they're confident, but actually it's interesting because I don't think it's always the case. The nerves do come into it, and when I've listened to podcasts or people talking about giving a talk, and it's doing something scary, but the courage is to just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Even though it's scary.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. So continuing the Steve Jobs theme then, listeners, he quoted, "For the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I do what I'm about to do today? Whenever the answer has been no for too many days, it's time to change." That's great, isn't it? Because don't we get so certain in our certainty that I'm going to be here today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? It's not granted. It's not granted.
Exactly. Yeah. We I feel like we the vast majority live in a very comfortable world, and comfortable is there's parts of that are good. It's good to be self-loving and have that kind of self-care in a sense, but comfort can actually be a really insidious thing after a while, can't it?
Insidious, I like that word. Insidious. It's got a real power to it, hasn't it? Insidious.
Yeah. Because it's one of those things that it's almost, I feel like almost the most insidious things are the ones that are actually appearing to be something that's good, or like so comfort, you feel like, oh, comfort, surely it's a good thing, it's but actually there's something insidious about it.
So do you see how I just growled there?
Yeah.
Can you growl for us? What's a female? What's a tigress's growl like?
Grr.
Right. Okay. Anyway, we'll do a podcast around this.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
need to. I think we might need Paul.
I
Who
think
are
I need to
you
work on my growl.
Well, who am I to judge whether that was good, bad, or indifferent? And on that note of need to work on it, Jobs, your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. But we do settle, don't we?
Yeah.
We do settle for, the normal because that's what mainstream society expects. I know when I was brought up, the old sort of model was, when you left school, you went down pit or you got an apprenticeship or you went in the forces. And then you'd serve your time, then you'd do 25 years, you'd get a gold watch and, this, that, and the other. And in between time, you'd meet a local girl, you'd have 2.34 children, you'd have a mortgage. It was all mapped out.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And we settled for that. Well, actually, I personally never settled for it because my life was so chaotic but I watched this around me and, that thing of Steve's 2 words at the end, don't settle. But we do want to settle, don't we, as humans? We want that. We're back to certainty again and control. I do want to settle. I do want to have control of this rather than flirting with that unsettled variety or uncertainty, sprinkling that spice into our lives.
Yeah. And I feel like that mindset of, settling, needing that control, needing that certainty, that would have really served us back in the day when we were in a tribe, because our lives every day were really in danger of actually dying. There would be tigers around, there would be other tribes, it would be actually quite serving to have that mindset, whereas we don't exist in that world. But I feel like our bodies still really have that. It's so deeply ingrained, and it's like we have this body that we feel like, we were born in this day and this is the body we have. But I feel like our bodies hold within us stuff that's ancient, isn't it? It's like the DNA, it's carried through. We're not just born fresh, we're born with DNA, we're born with I feel like so much kind of deeply rooted instinctiveness within us, and so yeah, I guess it's having that awareness, isn't it, to know that these things that are playing out, they have the kind of their good intentions. In a sense, it's trying to make sure we don't die, but we're not living in that world now where, I mean, I'm not, and some people may be. I think that it's not good to generalize and just say that, but from my point of view, and I think the majority of people in this world now are not in that immediate threat of danger of dying as we would be in a tribe.
That's a good question. That's a good question to ask. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that statement, but still, let's move on before we go down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
I've always been attracted to the more revolutionary changes. I don't know why, because they're much harder, more stressful emotionally, and you usually go through a period where everyone tells you failed completely. One of Jobs' sayings. Doesn't that also lend itself to revolutionary changes? Isn't that what Alice was doing? She was exploring revolutionary change. She was entering a new world of not the tried and tested, because even as a young child, there's that kind of, that formative years where your model of the world is set. Yes, there's still many, many experiences to unfold thereafter. But, I think, is it from the age of 7, 8, around that, your kind of previous formative years, the die's been cast, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this revolutionary change to swim against the tide. Alice was swimming against the tide, wasn't she? And that's why I feel that, from my, it feels so strange to say this, but research on this podcast, research. I don't know if I can even spell research anymore, let alone know what it means. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah. So I feel like Alice is exactly right. She was pushing the boundaries and the edges around what's possible into into the possible. So going above and beyond, and pushing the edges. That's a definite theme within Alice in Wonderland, isn't it? That believing in things that are or believing everything is possible.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how a lot of the kind of geniuses that have cropped up, like Picasso, one of his quotes was, "Everything you can imagine is real." And I feel like there's so much to be kind of explored. There's such a power in kind of not having any boundaries of what is possible, and kind of going above and beyond.
Yeah, above and beyond, below and beyond,
low and beyond.
Let's move on to another one.
Okay.
Remembering that you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. I love that. Because we build this. It's almost, I'm going to take ownership of this rather than offer generalizations. I lived in a goldfish bowl of a belief system. This is me. This defines me. And I don't want to lose whatever bit I've got. I want to control it. I want to hold on to it. And I'm glad, so glad that, as painful as it was, that metaphoric goldfish bowl got smashed. Because this little metaphoric goldfish then was allowed to swim. And then by swimming in local puddles first, and then in, streams, and then in rivers, and then in life's oceans, I've met with some other great, great, great whales that have been very, very helpful. Very helpful. Any thoughts on that? That remembering you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart.
Yeah. For me, what that does is make kind of it shows that what's already within you is what we're always trying to search for outside of us, but it's already there. I think so much of the time we're looking for the answer, or we're looking for something outside of us, whereas actually we've got everything we need already within us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This next one from Steve, I call him Steve. It makes it sound like he was a close personal friend. Stevie boy.
Yeah.
There was a bromance. Who coined that phrase, bromance? Anyway,
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you like that phrase?
I mean,
yeah. Anyway, this is the penultimate one. Your time is limited, so don't waste it by living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. What that says to me, listeners, you've heard me flag up so many times Dame Shirley Bassey with that iconic, beyond iconic, "This is my life," because that's exactly what she says.
Yeah.
This is my life. And if you really love me, you'll be pleased that I'm living and doing what I want to do. Because if you don't, well, I'm not really bothered anyway.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the most loving thing that you can actually do, because that not only inspires other people, but it, by living in your truth and the truth of who you are, and living, you know, with led by your heart and doing the thing that lights you up, and living your purpose. Everyone's so unique, so each one will look differently, but it will be done with such fullness and wholeness, that what falls out of that is like the best that it can possibly be. So by being the best that you can possibly be is not only the best thing you can do for yourself, but it's the best thing you can do for others.
Yeah. Last but not least, just a few words on this one from Jobs. I want to put a ding into the universe.
A what?
A
ding.
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 Ding. Okay.
I mean, ding. I mean,
Ding.
It's got endless possibilities.
It has. I love that.
I want to put a ding in the universe. My own personal reaction to that, listeners, was when I said the word ding, it was massively, energetically uplifting.
Yeah.
That was my own thoughts. Yeah.
There's almost there's a musicality to it.
Musicality, there's a word. Now, maybe this, and you know what's coming now. I can tell by the read in your face now, Rebecca, that you know what's coming on this musicality and this exploration of the unknown, and this whole shazazz.
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 Yes.
Let's duet. Don't commit yourself now. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Hold that thought.
Right.
Deep breaths. And I just kind of want to start to bring things towards a close now, if I may, by saying bringing an Alice and Steve together. Sometimes you just got to fall down a rabbit hole and deal with reality, rather than wondering about how different things could have been.
Yeah.
Draw your line. Doesn't that go back to what I said at the top, or suggested at the top? When you draw a line in the sand, go forward with a purpose.
Yeah.
You will find it, rather than you're waiting for, and I often use the kind of Prince Charming. Tony Robbins speaks about this. So many people waste their lives looking for the perfect love. It doesn't exist. Go and co-create it. Go and co-create it. And it's the same thing for me. This is parallel there with purpose. Go and create it. Do something.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the time as well, people are trying to search for that. They're searching for that person that, that they want to see, that has this XYZ, is, all these lists of things, but they're actually forgetting about being that person for themselves as well. So how can you expect to go out there and find this person that you've kind of, created, idealized in your mind, but you're not actually being that person for yourself, or you're not actually kind of like, I feel like that search, actually, if you just bring that back to yourself, then naturally it evolves. But yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's a co-creation,
So, Alice, Rebecca, anyone? I don't, the labels. Well, the label is irrelevant, with all due respect to your parents for giving you that name, Rebecca. So that will be respected. That will be respected. But in the context of playfulness and going down rabbit holes, etc., etc., have we left any holes? I was going to say unturned. No, it's stones that you leave unturned. No, I'm going to stand by my words. Let's leave. Have we left any rabbit holes unturned?
I feel like yes and no. I feel like because we've explored so many rabbit holes, but there's always more rabbit holes. But the rabbit holes that we've explored are, they've taken us in all sorts of directions. And I feel like there's been a theme of kind of, nothing's impossible and going kind of, beyond boundaries, beyond limits, and diving into the unknown. So maybe
just as there was a sequel to when Lewis Carroll wrote Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass, maybe there's a sequel to this podcast then, Rebecca.
I feel like there is. And it's interesting what's just come to me, because you know how you kind of talk around becoming the grey man and becoming into nothingness. So your name is nothing and my name is anything. How funny is that?
Okay. So listeners, when you see profiles out there in future, they will be, what will they be?
Nothing and anything.
Nothing and anything. I think we better leave it there.
Yeah, probably should. Maybe a bit too many rabbit holes for the day.
Yeah, okay. Rebecca, do you just want to share with listeners how people can find out more about World Game Changers? Because you're the lady that's got a finger on the pulse with all the, the technical stuff, the social media stuff, etc., etc.
Okay, sure. So World Game Changers, the website is kind of the main hub to go to. We also have a Facebook group. So if you go to worldgamechangers.org, that's the website, you can join the Facebook group from there. And we're posting regular content and all sorts of kind of inspirational insights and posts about projects and things. So it's definitely worth joining to kind of keep up to date with what's going on. We also have a YouTube channel. So the podcasts are on YouTube, they're on Spotify, various other platforms. So again, you can access that through the website. We have an Instagram as well, so give us a follow on Instagram. And I think there's lots of exciting things coming up. I mean, next year is just going to be crazy. So watch this space.
Some might say bonkers.
Bonkers, berserk.
Bonkers, I like that word, bonkers.
Yeah.
And on that curious note, listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed it as I've certainly have, and I know from the Cheshire Cat smiles that Rebecca's been exhibiting throughout this dance. If cats can dance, well, these two cats can dance because we do, we will. It's just been so good to have you along with us. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And other than that, because I'm as you can tell, I'm waffling now. I'm going down rabbit holes because I'm excited. But what I'm going to say is this: remember, the world's changing. How will you respond?
Thanks very much for listening to this World Game Changers podcast episode. Hopefully you found it interesting and helpful. Drop a line to Paul at worldgamechangers.org with any thoughts or questions you may have, and he'll be more than happy to respond. Remember, the world's changing. How will you respond?